Okay, so let's talk about some exam techniques that you should be using in there. But before I say this, you don't have to use this advice. Disclaimer, this is only advice. You should do what you think is best for you in the exam. So if you know another technique or you feel comfortable approaching it another way, you do you. Don't see this as written in stone in any way. You should do what is best for you, but this is just some advice that people might like to act upon. Okay, so with that disclaimer out of the way, let's talk about my exam math methods technique here. And I haven't thought of this myself. I have pretty much stolen this from a website called mathmethods.com.au, and he talks about some exam technique there. So you could search this up and find this for yourself. I've just given a bit of my own flair and modified it a little bit. Okay, so what is it? Well, the way that I think you should view your methods exam, and this applies for year 11 and when you get to year 12 as well, and that is see it your exam as a treasure hunt for marks. You want to go through that exam and get as many marks as possible. And as we're going through this, you're going to see that's the overriding goal here, which might sound obvious, but it should really impact how we approach our exam if this is the underlying goal, to get as many marks as possible. So let's begin by talking about your reading time. How should you use your reading time? So many people don't use their reading time effectively. They kind of just sit there mindlessly reading it. Use your reading time to figure out the questions you should do first. These are the questions you find easy and know how to do. So these are the questions you should do first. Also during your reading time, determine which questions you should skip and leave for the end. These are the questions you do not know how to do. So you shouldn't waste your time looking at a question you don't know how to do. You should say, I'm going to leave that to the end. Once I've gotten all the marks I can possibly get, I'll come back to that later. Now, advice for paper 2 here. You should find relevant information in your bound reference during the reading time. So during the reading time for your paper 2, you are allowed to refer to your bound reference. But for paper 2, also, you cannot use your CAS calculator during the reading time. So you can't touch your CAS calculator during the reading time. And of course, those 2 points here are only relevant for paper 2. Okay, let's now talk about the next section here. Now, step 2. So after the reading time, you're going to go through the entire exam answering questions you know. So once writing time begins, go through the entire exam and answer all questions you can answer easily. Move on if you don't know how to answer a question immediately. So if you're looking at a question and you don't know how to answer it, move on. You need to prioritize the questions you do know how to answer. So if you're stuck for more than a minute, move on. Don't just sit there and look at a question and be like, I don't really know what to do here. If you're stuck for more than a minute on a question, you should leave and come back to it later. And that's because there are other marks you could possibly get in this paper, and you want to maximize the amount of marks you can get. So your first time through the exam, you should be skipping questions you are unsure of. This ensures you get all the possible marks you can achieve from the exam. Use full working out to maximize marks and avoid silly mistakes. If a question is worth more than 1 mark, ensure you show all working. Okay, next step. Go through the entire exam again. This time answering the tougher questions you think with more time you can figure out. So once you're sure you've answered everything you can, go through the exam again, this time focusing on questions that you got stuck on the first time, but you think you can figure out with a bit more time. So these are the questions you think you know how to answer, but you just need more time to really think about it. So these are kind of like your medium difficulty questions. So you're going back and you're like, I think I know how to do this. I just need to think a bit longer on it. Now, once you've done those 2 steps, you're then going to go through the entire exam again, answering questions you're totally unsure of. So you only do this step once you've answered everything you can and have gathered the maximum possible marks. So that means you've gone through it all. You're confident that you've answered everything you possibly could have, and now you're going to go back and deal with those really tough questions. Because you can imagine if there's a really tough question in the middle of the exam, you don't want to stop there for 10 minutes trying to figure it out when you're wasting time that you could be answering questions you could get. So that's really the logic behind what's going on here. You're maximizing the amount of things you can harvest. Okay. You will lastly deal with the really tough questions. These are questions you're really unsure of and don't even know where to begin. So what do you do with these questions? Well, first, write out all the information you can get from the question. Then write out any formulas that might be applicable. Try to draw some diagrams as much as possible, and then just try your very best with it. if you feel you are making no progress and just wasting time, you must decide if it is better use of your time to review your past answers to other questions rather than focusing on these tough questions. So that's a determination that you need to decide. Now, if you have extra time at the end, now it's most likely you will not have spare time in the end, and that's okay. These exams are designed to be on the longer side, and that's trying just to stretch you. So if you find that you're working up to the final minute, that's kind of expected. But if you think you have finished early, don't just sit there. Keep going through the paper until you've answered everything you possibly can, then check the answers to your questions once you've answered everything you can. So just constantly check, constantly go over, make sure you've gotten as many marks as you possibly can. So that's really great advice there, I feel. I've just stolen it from this person, mathmethods.com.au. Hopefully he doesn't sue me. But this is just really great advice, and I've just modified it a little bit. But yeah, this is advice that's very relevant for your Year 12 math methods exams as well, but I think they're very relevant to us here going through Year 11. So hopefully you agree with this, but if you're thinking, you know what, I don't agree with this advice, I'm going to do my own thing. That is your choice. I'm not going to tell you how to go about your exams. That is your decision, but this is just helpful advice you might want to act upon. All right, I'll see you in the next part.